Hare Krishna. So I am, how they say, I am from the class of 1970. So almost 50 years of having been a real birth, second birth as Prabhupada's child. Everything that happened before was just the material waves, the ocean waves, carrying a soul here and there. But like many devotees of that era, that period in time, we heard the chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Some city that we were in all over America and starting in Europe, the only service that devotees had, besides taking care of the deities and preparing Krishna Prasadam, was every day, 10, 12 hours, go out onto the streets and just have Hare Kirtan. And almost all the devotees who came to this Hare Krishna movement in the West, they came from the holy name being heard. If you go to each devotee from that period and ask them, how did you become a devotee? Yeah. There's this one, I have a godbrother, Siddhanta Das. He makes these interview videos of devotees' memories of Srila Prabhupada. And there's so many of them, you can't even see them all. It's like volumes and volumes of books of just memories. I think, what does he have, 80 movies already of just the devotees remembering Prabhupada and telling amazing stories about Prabhupada. Unlimited. Prabhupada's glories as a representative of Krishna is like Krishna, unlimited. Pastimes, unlimited miracles, and unlimited potencies. But I remember one story from one of our leading sannyasi preachers, His Holiness Indradumna Swami. He was living somewhere in Michigan, state of Michigan. That's where in America they make automobiles. Lots of, Michigan's famous for that. Anyway, he was living there 1969, 1970, I think. And he had a house, he was living with someone, and he went outside in the backyard and he just heard kartal. What is that sound? That sound immediately awakened his soul, just that one sound. And he just started walking to hear, where is that coming from? And he met the devotees. I think it might have been Vishnu Jan Swami, one of our greatest kirtan leaders. Anyway, he heard that, he met him, and he became Indradumna Swami. So this was what Prabhupada brought. Anyone else could have chanted mantras. It would not have made people into Krishna Bhaktas. There is a quality of the sound vibrations that come from who Prabhupada is, that is so pure. And when you're not fully realized, you may not see or hear how pure that sound is. But it is the sound of the spiritual world. It's vibrating in him all the time. Because the sound of Krishna is the same as the form of Krishna, which is the same as the abode of Krishna, which is the same as all Krishna's energies, which is the same as all Krishna's eternal associates, which is the same as the form of Krishna, the image of Krishna, and Radha, and all of this is vibrating at every second inside our Srila Prabhupada. So when he makes those sounds, whether we know it or not, it's the spiritual world. It's just been presented to our eardrums. The whole spiritual world is right pouring into our ears. We had no idea that was happening. But that's the power of an acharya who descends from the spiritual plane and walks on this earth. So this Krishna mantra was known. People in America knew it before Prabhupada. There was this poet, very famous, one of the famous poets of the 20th century. In America, there were two very famous poets of the last century. One was T.S. Eliot. He wrote poems about how the whole material world is just a wasteland. No meaning, just a waste. Life is lost down in this material world. He didn't know what real life was. He just knew that down in the material world it is a wasteland. So he was a very famous poet in the first half of the century. Then came this Allen Ginsberg, who would write famous poems called, like Howl, it was called. Howling at the material world. Howling at all the evil, injustice and politics and wars and disease, and just howling from the soul. He didn't know what, he just knew this was not natural. It felt so unnatural. So he was chanting Hare Krishna. He had been to India. But no one became a Krishna Bhakta from Allen Ginsberg chanting. And Bhagavad Gita was already famous in certain circles in the Western world. For more than 100 years, very famous American writers and philosophers had been praising Bhagavad Gita. Philosophers like Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Henry David Thoreau. These were famous philosophers of the 19th century, the 1800s in America. They were reading Bhagavad Gita. They were astonished by it. The scientist who helped, physicist who helped organize the whole project to open up the energy of an atom and create atom bombs, atomic energy, he was reading Bhagavad Gita. So very famous people were reading Bhagavad Gita, but none of them were Krishna Bhaktas. Imagine hearing the Hare Krishna mantra and you don't become Krishna Bhakta. Reading the words of Krishna and you don't become a Krishna Bhakta. Even though you know the words are profound, stupendous philosophy. And then comes our Srila Prabhupada, who actually comes from the land of Krishna, the world of Krishna, into this material universe. He descends. And inside him is this vibration of the spiritual world, the sound of the whole spiritual world is in his heart. It's all inside his heart, inside his consciousness. So as soon as he writes the words of Bhagavad Gita and his purports, everyone becomes a devotee who reads it. You can't help yourself. And as soon as he starts chanting Hare Krishna mantra, immediately people of the most disreputable nature and horrible lifestyles, they suddenly give up everything and become Krishna bhaktas. How is that possible? And only because the purity is the force. That is the disciplic line, that it is presenting the spiritual world so purely. If you come in contact with that current, you become transformed, like electrified. The same thing happened in my life. I was a college student in 1969 in a city called Portland, Oregon. I was going to this one college. I did not know it, but famous devotees had already gone to that college and become devotees. But the school didn't advertise that. Oh, come to this college and then you can quit and become a Hare Krishna devotee. So when I went to this college called Reed College, I had no idea that from that college came our Shyam Sundar. From that college came Mukunda Goswami. They weren't telling us that news. Later on, from that college came this man, Stephen Jobs, who is the inventor of the Apple. You all have the phone and computer, Apple. So, following in our line, he went to this college and then also quit the college. And he gave a commencement address at Stanford University, a very famous university in America. Is considered like the Harvard of the West, or the MIT of the West, Caltech, MIT, Stanford, Harvard. So he was giving this commencement address, and he said, the two greatest things in his life that ever happened were when he got fired from Apple and he learned to pick himself up. But the strength to pick himself up and start again came from his first experience, his first greatest experience of his life, he said, was when he quit college. He just knew what he wanted to learn in this lifetime wasn't going to be taught by that college. And he said, and during that period of my life, when I was getting ready to start this company out of some garage, the one thing, he said this, it's in his speech, you can read it, that saved him was going to our ISKCON Portland temple for the Sunday love feast and just eating so much Krishna prasadam. He had no job, he had no money, he had left school, so he wasn't eating on the campus, and he was just filling himself up with Krishna prasad. So that's my temple. That ISKCON Portland. It had just opened up, and the temple president, the very nice, wonderful devotee named Lochan Das, Sriman Lochan Das. His preaching and his leading of this Harinam Kirtan there were only about 6 or 8 devotees. But I would be living off the campus and riding my bicycle or walking to go to class, just like Indradumna. I would hear the sound of the kartal and something immediately, what is that sound? I must see what that sound is. That pulled my soul. And I'd be walking all over the streets. Where is that sound? Where is that kartal? And then I saw these saffron-robed, although sometimes in those days they were yellow-robed, brahmacharis and householders, little group of chanting Hare Krishna. And when I saw them, I remember this so clearly. And this is Prabhupada. He had instructed we only had about 10 or 15, maybe 15 temples around the world. That's all we had. Now we have, 1,000 temples. But back then, 1969, 70, there weren't that many temples. And he said, every day you just go out and let everyone hear the Maha Mantra and start changing the whole atmosphere of the earth planet. This is stopped. That was the mission. Imagine young people being told, today they talk about the environmental pollution and we have to save the earth, change the atmosphere and the pollution of the earth. And this is like the biggest crisis. If we don't do this, our children will die, their children will die, the world will end. Well, Prabhupada gave us that mission when he first came to America and then England, and he said, you're going to save the earth by changing the whole atmosphere of this planet, by vibrating in public, loudly, this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That will change the whole atmosphere of the world. That is like bringing sunlight into a cave. It's darkness turning into light. And years later, he told us, from the sound vibrations of the spiritual world going out into the atmosphere of the earth, the whole planet is transforming so that people everywhere, their spiritual desires in that kind of atmosphere are awakened. That is the effect of spiritual energy going into the atmosphere of a planet. Prabhupada described this in great detail. At the end of 1976 and the beginning of 1977, there was a huge competition that had been building for a decade or more between communism. China was closed off, Vietnam was closed off, but it was so Russia, though, was not closed off. Russia was expansionist. They wanted to spread this communism everywhere, challenging any other form of society and a government. They were very revolutionary and determined that their way was the only way, that godless way was the only way. You know that the slogan of the original Russian Revolution, led by Lenin, from the teachings of Karl Marx, the original slogan was, religion is the opiate, the drug of the people. We have to kill religion so that humanism can prevail. Humans are everything, not God. God is nothing. God is a drug that keeps humans down. This was their mantra. This was Russian communism. And it looked at different times like there was going to be the Great World War III. Everyone thought it. You know, I was a young boy in 1963 when Russia put nuclear weapons on missiles on the island of Cuba, pointed at America. Those missiles, if they were fired, could reach any part of Washington, D.C. or New York in about 10 or 12 minutes. Just like that. And a city would be gone. So naturally, this brought the world right to the edge of World War III. America, you can't have those missiles there. That's too close. That is impossible. We would rather destroy Cuba and go to war with Russia than leave those missiles. So everyone had been thinking since then that there's going to be this big war. And then Srila Prabhupada came with this message, this revolutionary message of how to change a world through spiritual sound vibration, through taking the sounds of the spiritual world and injecting them into the environment, into the atmosphere. And not like regular sound, which you say it and then it dissipates. The nature of spirit is that it's everlasting. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Indestructible, unchangeable, eternal, immortal. It lasts forever. You put it in the atmosphere, it's there. It doesn't dissipate. So by the end of 76, devotees were so afraid also there's going to be a war, and it will start between India and Pakistan even, the rumor was. Even today that rumor still exists. But Prabhupada said, no, if you keep putting the spiritual sound vibration into the world's atmosphere, the spiritual spark, the soul, it will start awakening them to their natural desires, not their bodily desires, not their mental desires, but the actual desire of the soul itself will start to awaken. And Prabhupada made a prediction at the beginning of 1977. By this time, he had already established that in addition to Harinam Kirtan, even greater way of broadcasting spiritual sound vibration was by distributing these books from the spiritual world. Srimad Bhagavatam, the spotless Purana, book incarnation of Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna in literary form. So Prabhupada said, you put these books out, and that, as soon as a person just looks at the cover and says the title, they have repeated a spiritual sound. As soon as they read the book, the sound, the spiritual sounds within these books are going out into the world atmosphere. And he said that at the beginning of 1977, that it's possible, if you do enough book distribution, and if you do enough Hare Krishna Mahamantra Kirtan, there will be such a spiritual awakening that the people will bring down this godless system of communism. They will tear down the walls of communism from within, because their spiritual desire and sentiment will have awakened. I have many quotes in my diary, which one day will be published, where Prabhupada is saying, and I'm writing it as fast as he says it, as fast as I could, that in the future, real historians looking at this hundreds of years in the future, looking at what happened from this millions and millions of books being distributed and millions of people hearing Hare Krishna mantra through this ISKCON, from Prabhupada, that future historians will say, this changed the world. This really did surcharge the Earth's atmosphere and create a religious sentiment. And in that way, the people would not tolerate a government that said God is dead. They will not tolerate it. And Prabhupada's prediction, his vision, came true. The beginning of the 1990s, we had sold so many books. We had snuck into China, we had snuck into Russia, we had snuck into all the Iron Curtain countries, even in East Germany, Poland, everywhere. There's so much transcendental sound going out that the people had another revolution. And that communist government, as we knew it, for 100 years, practically, it just ended. And Prabhupada said, the historians of the future will say this was something made that religious sentiment awaken in these people. And it didn't matter, Prabhupada said, if their culture was to be Greek Orthodox or Roman Catholic or Protestant or Muslim or whatever their cultural religion might have been. It doesn't matter, but it's religion. Obedience to God, acknowledgement of God, acceptance of God being in control, God designing the world. Therefore, the world having purpose, not just the purpose that man assigns, but the purpose that God had for the world. And Prabhupada predicted this. He said there were two great demons that had to be killed in this part of the Kali Yuga. And he said, just like when Krishna came, or like when Lord Ram appears, it's to protect the devotees and annihilate the demons who are harassing the devotees. All over the universe, these demons were harassing devotees, and it caused the incarnation of Krishna, and before that, the incarnation of Lord Ram. So Prabhupada said, this modern Hare Krishna movement is another incarnation of Krishna. And he said that just like Krishna sports and kills these demons like the Kansa and Shishupal or Ravan, so this modern Hare Krishna movement, incarnation of Krishna, has appeared to kill two great demons of our time. The first, he said, is the demon of godless communism, godless government. Totally secular government that makes religion outlawed, that arrests priests or Brahmins or whatever and puts them in camps and murders them. You know, this is the history of communist Russia. The mundane pope in the 1930s of the Catholic Church, he had the world's greatest dilemma from his point of view. On the one hand, he has Stalin leading this communist godless state of Russia. And then on the other hand, he has this maniac, Hitler, who is killing everybody out of racism. But in order to gain power, this Hitler made an alliance with the Christian religion. So the Pope had to choose sides. How do you pick? And he picked Hitler over Stalin, because Stalin had killed every priest in the whole country. Hitler didn't do that, but Stalin did that, so the Pope picked Hitler over Stalin. Can you imagine such a situation? So these are great demons that Prabhupada said the modern Hare Krishna movement has appeared to destroy, annihilate. And practically speaking, everywhere in the world, communism is either gone already or almost gone. And future historians will say it is only possible, this only happened because of this spiritual awakening in people demanding it from the atmosphere of the planet being purified. So what is the second great demon that Prabhupada said this movement has to annihilate? This demon we haven't done so well yet. This is the demon that is now before us all over this world, practically like demons take over a planet. They have taken over this planet. And our movement is not fully targeting this demon yet, but it will very soon. This is the demon, other part of humanism. No God in the government, against the rules, communism. No God in thinking, godless science, godless nature, godless universe, godless origin of everything, origin of life, no God, origin of species, no God, species evolving, no God, planetary systems, no God, sun, moon, stars, no God. And this demon is in every school. So we send our children to these demons from the age of 4 or 5 years old, and their brainwashing is you have to go to college and finish college. So you finish college 18, 19, 20, 21 years. So that's 17 or 18 years we give our sons and daughters, here demons, take them. Here they are. You teach them what the truth is about life. You teach them how there's no God. You can explain life without God. Evolution with no God. Excuse me, everything, no God. So Prabhupada's final instructions to his devotees before he left this world was we have to defeat this godless science, this secular insanity that, just like in my country, America, this country started based on people wanting to have the freedom of religion. That's how this country of America started. And today, the way they interpret American government documents, the Constitution, the way they interpret it is that, oh, you want the freedom of religion? That means no religion. It's printed on the US dollar, in God we trust, no God anymore. You mention God in a school, you can be discharged as a teacher. unless you do it in some academic way and make it not in any way truth, but just some mythology. Here's what these people believe at this time, and here's what the gods of this country and the god of that country. But you're not allowed to pray. When I first went to school in America, little boy, they had school prayer. That is against the law now in America. Against the law. You cannot talk about God. You cannot pray to God. So this is very, the demons means those who hate God. They have taken over the way, and they are controlling how people think and how people see themselves. And just what kind of world is it if it has no purpose? If it just exists to you, humans, you decide what the purpose is. You, humans, you do whatever you want with it because it doesn't have an intrinsic purpose on its own. You have a human body with desires, but you can decide what to do with it. Why practice restraint? Go for it. You know, they have the demons not only in the schools teach this godless way of life, but through all the media, they have propagandized advertising, amazing slogans and advertising that go into people's brains for selling material things. This subtle advertising. Go for it. What does that mean? No restraint. Indulge yourself as much as possible. This is a very famous commercial in the West. Indulge and feel no guilt. Just indulge. Normally, if we were just sitting rationally thinking about that as a concept, we would say that's animals. That's animal society. That's not civilized. But this is the slogans of the great shoe companies and clothing companies and fashion houses and perfume houses of the world. Just indulge. Don't feel guilty. No, have no restraints. Go for it. You decide what you want to do with this universe because it doesn't belong to anyone. It's not anyone's property. So fight over it. See how much of it you can take for yourself. Go for it. This is the message of our demon society. And this is all coming from, there's no God. There's no designer of life. Therefore, if it doesn't have a designer, it doesn't have a purpose other than just to exist and perpetuate itself. And somehow indulge and enjoy and experience as much as you can with no restriction. Who is considered the most famous of people? Those who have the most sex. Those who have the most wealth. And it doesn't matter how they came to have that wealth. As long as they have it and they can buy anything for themselves and have as much sex as possible, they are very famous. There was a there was a movie years ago, so many movies, but there was a movie about a possible comet striking the Earth, and it was going to be like the age of dinosaurs coming to an end. It was going to usher in an extinction level, they called it ЛИКЕ, extinction level event. So, in this movie, they're trying to explain, I just lost the thought because I'm a little sick. They're trying to explain whether there's any purpose to life. They have concluded in this movie that other than what humans can do, it's just nature's way. It creates, it destroys, it creates, destroys. There's no purpose behind anything. And this was a very popular movie. This theme is in a lot of movies, very popular theme. That just mindless nature with no purpose. So the world is coming to an end in this way or that way. And if there's no purpose, how can there be any safety in society? People will, and we see that today, that it is lawlessness on a level that people are no longer protected. People are abused as objects of enjoyment. People are attacked. Women are attacked all over the world. Children are seduced all over the world. This is growing and increasing in every day, every year. This is getting worse and worse. This is the result of having no purpose other than just enjoy as much as you can, because when this body is done, there's nothing left afterwards. So anyway, we all know this is the effect of godless society, godless understanding of life. So this movement has to show people who think in a very rational way, pragmatic way, in a, as you call it, a scientific way, where, what is science? You can demonstrate some process, some law of nature, how it works. You can repeat it in an experiment, and thus it becomes accepted as a fact, as a truth, as knowledge. So people who are trained to think in that way, but God has been left out of their equations. So this movement, Prabhupada started this preaching society to penetrate into these, what do you call them here in India, these IT school universities? IIT. These are the top schools in your country, aren't they? Do they let you come to distribute books? Because you're religion. So they've kept you out. They've captured the best minds of your country. Right? You can't go there to give them Bhagavad Gita or anything, or Krishna Kirtan. And they are just getting trained to see nature with no God, no purpose, no controller, no design. And this movement can change that. Right now, we are building in India something that's going to revive, restore Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta Institute of Science Preaching. It's called the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. Now, everyone has some idea of what this huge temple is, and it has the chandelier of a Puranic universe. But what you may not know is that 1/3 of this temple, under its own dome, has its own planetarium at the top. And it has many levels of exhibits. And these exhibits are very, very scientific exhibits about what is the difference between the soul and the body, but in scientific terms. I'll give you an example. When you first walk in, this is our plan, there will be a life-size, moving and talking statue of Srila Prabhupada, introducing this museum and welcoming you. Like something right out of Disneyland. When the President Lincoln stands up and welcomes you. The Hall of Presidents has that moving audio animatronic image of Lincoln. So we were going to have this of our Srila Prabhupada. And then from there, he says, now let me explain where all this knowledge comes from. And he takes you into this huge hall, which is the forest of Naimisharanya. And you see the sages, and you hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this just takes a few minutes, and then you start the museum experience. So you first go into the museum, and there will be this mirrored wall. Very interesting. So you stand in front of it, and you see your reflection. Then you move to the next position. You see your reflection, but let's say I'm in a man body. So the next image, I'm a little boy with my facial recognition, my face. The next image, I'm a very old man. The next image, the same face, I'm a woman. Same me, but now I'm in a woman body. So I went to a baby body, an old man body, a woman body. And then finally you put on these glasses. Same face, you're in the body of a different species, an animal. But it's you. You can see it's you. And with these glasses, it's like some virtual reality. What would the family life be like if you were an elephant? You get to see, oh, there's my wife, there's my little children, but it's me. So that's the first exhibit. Who am I? We have on each floor like 10 exhibits. Building up, building up, building up. This journey is amazing. All the scientific information that our movement can gather is in these exhibits. We talk about how consciousness, where is consciousness coming from? We have all these explanations about the brain and the different minute parts of the brain, which is, I can't repeat it because it's not my field. But the devotee scientists have already written the script. And then, after explaining all these theories about where consciousness comes from, you come to a hospital room and the brain is dead. The person is considered brain dead. And then, maybe hours later, that person in that coma where there was no brain activity comes back into the body, is revived. This is called NDE, near-death experience. This phenomena has been documented by universities in volumes and volumes of books, factual documentation that no brain. And when the person comes back and awakens, well, what did you experience, if anything? Oh, I was floating above the body. I was watching the doctors trying to do manipulation and revive my body. I heard this conversation between the doctor and the nurse. Now, how is that consciousness is floating outside the body, comes back in, no brain activity, now it's back in the body and can tell you what happened? So, in this way, this is the first few exhibits. Consciousness can exist. It's not material. It's not part of the brain. It's not part of the chemistry or the electrical interactions of the brain cells. It's existing when the brain is dead. And it can tell you things that happened when it comes back. So then it goes to reincarnation, then the next level, now you're up to level 2. Now we start talking about origins. And we compare Vedic knowledge of origins of life and origins of the species to modern science, theories of evolution. And we show amazing problems that they have never solved in their theories of evolution. You know, the theory is something will evolve over a long period of time. Even if there's a mutation, it'll still generally, evolution over a long period of time happens because it's beneficial. And because it's beneficial, other traits that are not beneficial die off. Natural selection. Only that which is beneficial stays, and gradually by nature combining, it evolves and on and on. And we introduce exhibits that shows in the fossil record explosions of life forms at one historic period in the fossil record, which didn't happen step by step, but so many different species just pop up at once in the same strata. It's called the Cambrian Explosion. Anyway, those who have a mind to hear about this will see, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense in evolution. Or now that we have the instruments to look inside a cell, which originally in the 19th century they didn't have. They did not know that the cell is filled with very complicated machinery. And I'll explain this very simply. Let's say a machine has 100 parts and no designer. Okay? Somehow or other, over millions of years of bumping into chemicals and molecules, some parts will stick, others won't stick. So you start with one part, now you're up to part number 30. Millions of years more, and then you get to part number 50. And eventually, when you get all 100 parts, that machine actually works. But it wasn't working when you only had 70 parts to it. It had no purpose when it had 50 parts. But somehow those parts, which have to be there when it's completed, all 100 parts have to be there, they didn't fade away. The whole theory is based on the energy of nature will sustain and hold on to something if it has a benefit. Well, part number 30 had no benefit. Until you put all 100 parts on the machine, the 25th part didn't have any benefit. Why would nature's energy hold on to it and wait until part 99 comes? And this is called irreducible complexity. The modern theories of biochemistry and biology can't explain this. They know it's existing. They know they haven't explained it. They know it's a problem for the theory. So why do they keep teaching these theories in the schools? Well, in the future we'll figure it out. But until then, we're not going to teach the middle school kids that the theory doesn't work. We just won't mention the parts that don't work and don't make sense. Well, our museum is going to explain those theories and all the parts of those theories that don't make sense, that don't work according to their rules and their principles. And then next to it, there'll be exhibits of Vedic evolution. How thousands and thousands and thousands of years before Mr. Darwin, who's only, 250 years ago. Thousands of years before him, the Vedas described a species evolving, life evolving. So in this way, couched in the language of science, not religion, we are building a science museum. Everyone is contributing to the building, but what's going inside the building is what counts. These exhibits, by the time we have finished explaining why there are different species, and then how that consciousness rises in an evolutionary way to get human life, and then there'll be exhibits about the laws of action and reaction, is natural laws that could cause consciousness to go back into a lower species in the next life. Karma is what future life is. What you do in this human life creates karma. The animal life doesn't create karma. You just keep evolving. But human life, choice, freedom of choice, enough independence, you create your own karma. You create your next body by whatever you're doing now. This will be so carefully explained that you could go back into that pool. And then the second level will end, but wait, why is this limited to just the Earth planet? Why does every religion in the world just think that there's life on Earth, that's it? They only talk about life on Earth, God coming to Earth. There's millions and millions and millions of realms in this universe, planets beyond counting. Who talks about what happens there? What, out of this entire geography, this is the only little spot where there's life? So the second level of this museum will end with that. What if the karma, instead of taking you down, takes you to another world? Oh, and then we get into cosmology. And before we get to the Puranic universe, we're going to show the Surya Siddhantic universe, which resembles what our scientists can physically see with their senses. We have exhibits about imperfect senses. Anyway, this is going to revive the whole science preaching. And these exhibits, once they're built, different countries and ISKCON will want them for their preaching all over the world. And books and magazines will come out of this. And we were talking about, years and years ago, we took all of Prabhupada's teachings and the devotee scientists' teachings and put it in one magazine. It's called Origin. We published this in 1983 under the direct order of Srila Prabhupada from 1977. He ordered us to publish this. It took us 6 years before we could do it. I promise you, if you start distributing this magazine Origin in English and in Hindi, they will not be able to keep you out of those, what do you call them? Where they have built the walls and captured all the best minds of your country. This magazine is a science magazine. It's not a religious magazine. And once this spreads, within 2 or 3 years, those walls, like the Berlin Wall, they will come down. I promise you, because Prabhupada promised that this was what the Hare Krishna movement was meant to do. It's guaranteed this will happen. You just need the right tools, the weapons, which we have, which we're building in Mayapur, and which we already have this magazine. You could just start it tomorrow. Just print it. So, in this way, Prabhupada came into our world to save it. And here we are, his very happy children. And, you know, as I was walking into this hall and I saw the deities, especially for those of you who live here in this temple or who can come all the time to this temple. That's the spiritual world on those altars. You just walk past it and you're stunned. You have to stop. You're in the presence of God himself. It's so obvious to those who have the eyes to see it. You have no idea how blessed and how fortunate you are to be able to wake up, especially for those of you who live in this temple. You wake up in the house of God. You get bathed and cleaned and dressed and run to see God. How may I serve you, God, today? You're the master. I'm a little servant in your house. I'm running to serve you and see you and sing for you and dance for you and offer food to you and then go out and serve you by taking your message everywhere. If you spend a lifetime doing this, you know what happens at the end of this life. So don't ever leave, because you know what happens at the end of this life. If you do this for a whole lifetime, very sincerely, not for yourself, but for that Ram, Sita Ram and Radha Rasa Bihari and Gaurita, if you just make one life for them, when this body is finished and you close your eyes, when they next open, you will all be on that planet in one universe where Krishna is coming or where Lord Ram is coming. You will be born there at that moment to be part of that Leela, to finish your training. You need to have one more life after this one on the planet, in the universe, where Krishna himself is coming as Krishna or as Lord Ram. Because unless you have that final training, if you just go right to the spiritual world, this is a funny story. Bhavananda told me this story, actually. Bhavananda Prabhu. He's going to be here tomorrow. He's in the hospital. He's coming here tomorrow. Anyway, he told me that one day, Srila Prabhupada, and he was talking to Srila, he had decorated Prabhupada's rooms in LA Temple, New Dwarka, when we first bought the temple. Prabhupada liked how he decorated. He said, you will be our decorator. So one day they were talking, and Prabhupada said, so, the ultimate goal of going back home, back to Godhead, your guru, your spiritual master, Prabhupada saying, I will take you right to Krishna in the groves of Vrindavan. I will bring you right in front of Krishna himself. I will introduce you to Krishna, and then I will step back. And Prabhupada said to him, and then what will you do? You have no idea what to do if you're in front of God, what you're supposed to do. You have no idea. What will he do? So we take one more birth after this. On that, when Krishna leaves 5,000 years ago, or when Lord Ram left 1 million years ago, he immediately is appearing in another universe. And when that Leela is done, and he leaves, immediately appearing in another, there's countless universes that come out of the body of Mahavishnu. You know, this is a very amazing thing about our cosmology. It's quite different from the Christian Judaic idea of God creating and working so hard to create. In the Vedic world cosmology, God is just resting, like on a beach, and all the universes are just coming out of him as he's breathing and relaxing. He's not working very hard at all, is he? This is our idea about God. He's more powerful, doesn't have to work very hard. So anytime he appears in the universe, and then when he leaves, he goes to another place in another universe, and again the Leelas. So when we're done with this body, we're going to take our birth in one of those planets in a different universe to finish our training, so that when Prabhupada brings us to Krishna in the groves of Vrindavan, and by the way, in this Hare Krishna movement that comes out of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, yes, the groves of Vrindavan is the destination. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, avatar that spreads the Hare Kirtan, Sankirtan Yoga, is in every Kali Yuga. But only one time in a day and night of Lord Brahma is it Krishna himself. Not just expansion of Vishnu, but Krishna himself as Chaitanya. Well, that Krishna himself came 500 years ago to this earth. There's no greater avatar or a descent of God, even greater than the descent of Radha and Krishna, or even greater than the descent of Sita and Ram. And I don't mean this in any judgmental way. It's not meant for material estimations. But Radha is, Krishna is like 10 millions and millions of cupids in his beauty and in the love that awakens as soon as you see him. And the Shastra says that Radha is 10 million times greater than that in beauty. It's so amazing, attractive, in causing love to spring out of a heart, that even Krishna tries to measure Radha's love. He can't. God, who can do anything, can't figure out Radha. This is very esoteric. And as he's pondering, how can she have this effect on me? I affect everyone and she affects me. Like, how is this possible? I don't understand her. I will become her to try and understand what it's like to be Radha. So this infinite beauty of Radha enters into Krishna, and Krishna comes as Lord Gauranga. Already millions of cupids, beauty of Krishna, times 10,000 more, because in the mood and complexion of Radha, there's no form of God more beautiful than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita. You may think that the most ultimate beauty and creation of love is between Radha and Krishna. But Chaitanya Charitamrita says, but when Krishna acts like Radha in this eternal pastimes of Lord Gauranga, that's even greater. So we are all members of this line coming from Lord Chaitanya. So we're not fully awakened yet, but our destiny is with Lord Krishna understanding Radha in the groves of Vrindavan. That's our destiny. That's what our next birth will be preparing us to. And then Prabhupada will introduce us. Here, you can be this maidservant, you can be this servant, you can be that servant. That's the Hare Krishna movement, the esoteric Hare Krishna movement, the internal reason for the Hare Krishna movement appearing. The external reason is to annihilate the demons and to awaken the souls of everyone, and maybe empty the whole universe. And the esoteric reason is to have a glimpse of the love of Radha for Krishna, and to mine those emotions, and to be part of that experience of Lord Chaitanya. This is what Srila Prabhupada has given to all of us. Only someone from that realm could give us this. Sorry, I've spoken way too long. Please, any reflections or comments? Yes, Hare Krishna. There's a microphone, we can pass it around. And thank you for enduring me and tolerating this talk. But if we want to save these souls, we have to do this science preaching. You have to make those walls come down. You have to figure out how to get those walls to come down.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna back.
I think Prabhupada is the first one to term this religious movement as a science. But science should be measurable and verifiable.
Verifiable.
And measurable.
Measurable.
So, did he give any way of measuring the volume of consciousness or our spiritual progress or elevation? Otherwise, it is just simply a religion and not science. And have we developed any such measurement?
There is.
What is that? Objective.
It is objectively, but remember, to understand the science of consciousness, you have to make sure that your consciousness doesn't contaminate the experiment or the observation. This is very important. This is a fundamental principle of science, that the observer can influence and therefore misread or misunderstand how nature is working. So, in order for your consciousness to not, to be able to evaluate, it has to be free from pollutant. This is part of the process of this science of consciousness. So, what is the pollutant in our consciousness right now? It is the symptoms of tamaguna or rajaguna, and those have to go away. If those remain, then the way you observe consciousness will be restricted. Now, if you can get them to go away by leading a sattvic life of purifying your consciousness and your senses, and purifying consciousness means not just the objective world, but the subjective world, the world of your mind and your thoughts and your desires. That's part of consciousness. So, subjectively, your desires also have to be pure. You can objectively purify yourself, but be thinking all the time of sex or wealth for yourself, this false concept, false ego. So we have a process where the pollutant of tamaguna and rajagun can leave your senses, your mind, even your thoughts, even your desires, and you get elevated into the sattvic plane. And when you're on that plane, then, if you want to understand the gradations and the way to measure pure levels of consciousness, higher and higher levels, there is a great scientist who wrote a book, which Prabhupada translated. It is called the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And the translation is the nectar of devotion. And there's chapters and chapters and chapters describing lower and higher states of consciousness after it is sattvic. And it is measurable. And the symptoms are given in that book. But again, in order to experience and observe that, we have to use an instrument that's not contaminated. So this process can actually bring us to that sattvic plane. And that's where real Krishna consciousness begins. So thank you for that question. Anyone else want to have a talk about a pastime of Prabhupada? Yes, Hare Krishna.
You talked about, you explained about the impact of media and the influence on education.
Yeah, very subtle.
Yeah, very subtle.
But constant.
Yeah.
Constant. You watch TV? Does everyone in this room who doesn't live in the temple watch TV? Well, that's constantly bombarding you.
Yeah. I just disconnected the TV signal from my house. So my question is, these people, there will be surely somebody who is, I mean, the various media houses or those who are controlling objects for education or the process for education. There will be some minds somewhere. Have they been identified? They are part of the demons.
Yes, it would be nice if it was just one Ravana.
No, there won't be one.
And we just killed that one Ravana and then everything changes.
No, there won't be one. There won't be one. That is understood. But have they been identified?
You have to think in terms of how lust and greed work. And those who have completely, with all their power and all their might and all their heart and all their desire, embraced lust and greed. Those are the demons that controlled us. And based on that embrace, that intense holding on to lust and greed, they are naturally able to enslave the human race. It's not very hard. They will create in your mind a desire for something that you really do not need, but you will begin to think you need it. You won't be happy without it, right? You have to acquire, you have to buy, you have to purchase. And what do you do with all these desires that they are bombarding you with? You go into debt. And this is the simplest way that the whole human world is enslaved. You are slaves to debt. Why can't you retire at the age of 20 or 30? Because you have debt. In my country, we have been brainwashed to think you have to go to college or your life is finished. So I have a daughter. I sent my daughter to college. That cost me $40,000 a year for 4 years. That's a lot of debt. So I am working, paying off that debt. I don't want her to pay it off. I want to. I have 1 more year. By this year and next year it'll be gone. And then I can be like you, come into the temple again. But right now, I'm paying off debt. I'm a slave to debt. I'm working so hard. And the whole world is set up like that. They create these desires. You have to have this thing and that thing. It costs so much money. You have to borrow money to own a house. You have to borrow money to go to college. You have to borrow money to do this and that. And have credit cards. They make it so easy. Here's a credit card, 1 year, no interest. Oh, this is like free money. Let me spend as much of it as no interest. And then at the end of that 1 year, I have debt. Now I have to work like a dog to next 20 years of my life to pay for my house and to pay for my children's college and to pay for my cars, and then the car dies, I have to get the next car. And of course, oh, you have a wife, you have to get her jewelry. You have to. And the house, you want to have wonderful sex life, you have to have very expensive furniture, beautiful house, and this and that, maybe more than one. It just goes on and on and on. Go for it, indulge. And we'll give you the money for free for 1 year. No interest for 1 year. Most of the credit card companies, they advertise that. Here, 15 months, no interest, free money. Spend it as much as you can. And now you are our slave. That's how the demon society works in this age of Kali.
But Maharaj, you just described the process they are using.
Yes, it is.
You haven't identified for us.
Those who have embraced it the strongest, who have no spiritual sentiment at all, they are so selfish, so filled with lust, and so filled with greed. Whoever those are, and there's hundreds and thousands of them, they are controlling this. And there are souls that are here that are that evil. They don't care, even for their own family. No, they just care about themselves. We now have a person, I don't mean to make this political, so I'll just say this objectively, and I don't know what's in anyone's heart. This man is now president at United States. He has done some devotional service. No one knows this. But when we, in 1976, were trying to have the first Rath Yatra festival in New York City on 5th Avenue, we had worked so hard to try to bring this about, and we had to have a place where we could build the Rath Yatra carts. And he gave us one of his places and said, here, use this. So this crazy person has done some devotional service. But at the same time, you're about to see in the next year or two, he's going to sacrifice his own children just to save himself. If there's any investigations about him and his business, he's just going to blame, he's going to let his children take the blame. This is that level of greed and selfishness and lust. There are thousands of people like him who pollute the world with everything they say. If it's a lie, you know, lies hurt the earth. They create a pollution in the atmosphere of the earth. The earth planet is so disturbed and diseased by lying. And now, whatever a leader does, others follow. So if you have a leader that can't ever tell the truth and everything he says is a lie, well, now the whole world thinks lying is okay. So I'm not trying to single him out. There are people much worse than him.
Yeah, you described some.
But those are the demons that are polluting our world. We, as selfish as they are for themselves, their greed and their sex life and their power and fame, we have to be even stronger in selfishly embracing saving them. See, the mood of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda is not save yourself. It's save everyone that you see. The instant you see them, you should feel, this is a kin, this is a brother, this is a sister going to hell. I have to save them. They're living in a fire. I have to put out the fire. They need a first responder. I have to be the first responder. This is Sankirtan consciousness. Prabhupada brought to his devotees this state of mind which we call Sankirtan consciousness. That whoever you see, and I don't care if they're black, white, woman, man, young, old, thin, fat, I don't care what they look like. They're your brother. If you truly have spiritual vision to see God as the Father of every life, then that is your family. And they're going to karmic hell, and you have to save them and not just walk away and ignore their plight. That's the Sankirtan consciousness of the Hare Krishna movement. It has to be stronger than the consciousness of the demons that cling to selfishness. And this is our competition. Who will win? We will win, because our Sankirtan consciousness is filled with ecstatic joys and pleasures that they can never even imagine. Whatever pleasures they're fighting for are flickering, and our pleasures increase every day. The next time we try to save someone, our pleasure just increased again. The next time we try to save someone, Krishna, sitting in their heart, is so pleased. Oh, my devotee has finally come to try to awaken this stupid sleeping soul that I've been traveling with through millions of births, staying with him as his friend. He never turns to me. Look, my devotees are getting him to think of me and hear about me. Do you know how much pleasure Krishna feels in the heart of that person that you're trying to save? That ecstasy coming out of Krishna, you start feeling that when you're a preacher, when you're on Sankirtan. You feel it so intensely, you don't walk from person to person. You do calmly so you don't scare them. But actually inside, you're running to them. You can't get enough. 2 ears are not enough to catch all this nectar. You could have thousands of ears. That's how that's the mood of our movement. That this pleasure is so intense, I have to run to every soul. Inside, I have to have that feeling. Not let one get by. And if one does get by, if I'm distracted and hesitant, and I let them walk by without trying, I feel so bad. And we were just talking about this, that in Krishna Lila, our gopis of Vrindavan, Brajabhumi gopis, Vrindavan, their love for Krishna, they're seeing the beauty of Krishna, they're tasting the love, is so ecstatic that part of their mind they're saying, what is this Brahma who engineers all these bodies in all the worlds of this universe? How dare he make me have a body where this eye blinks? How dare my eye blink? Make me interrupt seeing Krishna by a blink. We don't even, in our dull state, we don't know when we're blinking. And the gopis think it's the end of the world that their eye blinked. How can you have that mood of love? Sankirtan consciousness. You see one soul that gets by, oh my God, you feel that same pain. Don't ever let them get by again without trying to save them. You start to have those feelings. That's how Prabhupada trained his devotees to be in performing this Sankirtan Yajna. Such intensity. I remember a long time ago I gave a class at our Hawaii temple that this going on Sankirtan Yajna is exact like in the mood of the gopis. I was just blurting things out so one of my god sisters wrote a letter, her name is Srimati Nandalal Devi, very nice devotee, we were very good friends. She wrote a letter to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, this Rameshwar came here, it was 1973, some brahmachari, saying that you go on book distribution, it's the mood of the gopis. And Prabhupada wrote back and said, yes, he is correct. He is correct. That intensity where you can't even stand the blinking of an eye, that's the mood of Sankirtan, of book distribution. Where you can't stand that your body has to go back to the temple to take rest. What kind of body is this that it needs rest? What kind of body is this that it needs food? The Sankirtan devotee has such passion for saving souls that it wishes I didn't even need to sleep or eat. That is the mood of that is the Brajabhumi. That is the mood of the residents of Vrindavan. That's the mood of Sankirtan. That's the intense mood of book distributors or preachers. So we are teaching that mood of Krishna Bhav. That's the Hare Krishna movement's mood. That's the official mood of the Hare Krishna movement. Mood of the gopis. In that way. It's the external way of it, understanding it. So I have to take your leave, and I can't thank you enough for letting me glorify Prabhupada. Thank you for inspiring me to say some things about our Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.